Hi, my name is Sebastian Magnac, and I'm a Sec DevOps engineer that focuses around network automation and security automation using tools like HashiCorp Terraform, Vault for secrets, and lately I've been doing a lot of work with Boundary and also creating self-service portals within ServiceNow. So I'm going to talk to you about how you can build a break glass solution with HashiCorp Boundary and Vault, and creating a self-service portal that allows your employees, your customers, your users to be able to enhance access to specific infrastructure. So what is a break glass? So breaking glass accounts are a type of privileged accounts that are used in emergencies, such as system failures or security breaches or access enhancements into secret infrastructures. And they should be managed in a way that ensures that they are only used when necessary and that they are audible and traceable. If we take a look at some of the best practices when building these accounts, we want things to have limited access. So only a small number of trusted individuals should have access to maybe that infrastructure or to that break glass accounts. And their access should be regularly viewed. We have to establish procedures, right? Establish a clear procedure for using a break glass account, including when it should be used, who can use it, and how it should be used. We got to monitor usage, monitor and audit the use of the account, including who has used it and when, and need to ensure any suspicious activity is really investigated. We need to secure the account. We need to make sure that the account is strong, its unique credentials, they get rotated. We need to ensure that it is protected with multi-factor authentication. We also want to make sure this is tested regularly testing the accounts to ensure that it is functioning correctly and that any issue are identified and resolved, right? Having incident response plan in place is very important. We have to have an incident response plan so that when that account is used, right, we need to include the procedures for restoring really those normal accounts or identifying that case of emergency itself, right? We need to have an expiration date when that account actually expires or that access expires, kind of having this just-in-time credentials or be able to deactivate it once it's no longer necessary itself. So when should we use these accounts? Well, break glass accounts or enhanced security accounts really is a method of providing a temporary access in emergencies where normal procedures are not suffice. It should only be used in the last resort, such as when, for example, a help desk or a system administrator is not available. And this method is often used in situations where there are accounts or authentications or authorization issues. And in certain companies, there may be critical tasks that need to be performed by individuals who are not normally authorized to do so. For example, a junior database admin may need to perform a certain task because of a specific criticality. And that senior database admin that has access is not available. So we need to have some type of break glass solution deployed. By having these break glass solutions is really implemented by a prepared emergency process that can be quickly accessed without any unnecessary administrative delays. And these accounts and procedures for accessing them should be well documented, tested as part of our implementation process. It should be managed carefully and ensure that timely access when needed itself. So when we take a look at this, these break glass requests, we have to have a flow. And this flow really starts with the initial request. So in this case, we're going to use ServiceNow as our main service catalog to request that. We need some type of approval. We need auditing, governance. We need change management approval, manager, director, senior, VP, etc., to approve those requests. We want to have dynamic credentials be sent and generated. So we want this just-in-time credentials. We don't want that user to have access to anything. We want it to be given to them without them seeing it. We want this access and provisioning in it. We want logging and auditing. And of course, we want this post-access reconciliation, that everything goes back to normal, but we have logs and audits of everything. So if we take a look at this environment, it's pretty straightforward, kind of what I built. And it focuses on using ServiceNow as our self-service portal. So ServiceNow has a full self-service catalog that you've used probably throughout your career, that you can get things done, get a image installed. But you could also use it to make changes and orchestrate flows or create an entire workflow for the system. So what I'm going to kind of demo is creating a self-service catalog request, which creates a RITM that is sent to review to your manager for approval. Once that C-task is sent, it's approved, rejected, whatever the initial outcome is. Then ServiceNow and the mid servers make a call to our HCP boundary. And boundary is going to grant, or ServiceNow is going to make boundary grant us access for that specific user. Once that initial request is approved, then the user can then authenticate to boundary. They're going to connect to boundary. They're going to try to connect to Azure AD. So they're going to initiate that connection. They're going to redirect the auth to Azure AD, which is going to return that JWT token, which then Azure requests the user to authenticate, and the user connects. Once that user connects to that specific device, for example, in the demo I'm going to show, is we're going to connect to this EC2 instance. And inside this EC2 instance, we select inside of boundary, hey, I'm going to connect to this device. In that time, boundary makes a request to Vault. So Vault is our secrets engine that stores and manages all our secrets, keys, APIs, passwords. And Vault is going to give us the key and is going to inject the credentials into our session. So as the user, I don't see the password, and that key is generated for me and injected into the worker for me to connect to. Once that happens, I am able to then SSH and establish a connection, which then I'm starting to record my SSH sessions, which are then being logged and audited for events. So we have a trail of what is happening on the device. And from that gives us this full auditing, logging, deployment in it. And then at a specific time of this, maybe an expiration, maybe a 30-minute, 1 hour, 5 hour cycle, whatever is been initiated or requested, ServiceNow is going to see that that time is expired, makes an initial call or a workflow call to boundary, and revokes access for this. So now the user session is disabled, access is removed, and the entire environment is back to normal where it should be. And with that, we get audit logs from ServiceNow from a whole ticketing perspective that we can audit and see and have governance that somebody accessed this at this point in given time. And we also have these just-in-time credentials at the same time that were deleted, removed, that don't need access to those devices itself. So it really helps us build this self-service portal that allows us to get into specific private infrastructure and instances itself. And really the benefit of this is enhanced security and dynamic credentials, comprehensive auditability. We see everything that's happening. Governance through change management, which is super important, big enterprises. Flexibility for various organizational needs, right? We can apply this not only to EC2 instances inside of private networks, but Kubernetes environment, databases, networking devices. So it gives us a variety and flexibility of how we can actually demo and show this off. So let's take a look at the demo on how this works. The first thing we're going to do, everything is built with Terraform in mind. We have HCP boundary deployed. We have a worker deployed in here, so it creates that tunnel between the private worker and HCP boundary. We have specific targets here deployed, so a Linux server itself. And then from a boundary perspective, we have our boundary targets deployed in here where we're injecting credentials from HashiCorp Vault. We have a bunch of other devices itself. We have our credential store deployed. We have our credential library. We have our authentication method with Azure, ROIDC. We have specific roles that have been defined for those specific teams itself. So if we open up the diagram here, we have our user, and here we have an environment. So we have an AWS region where we have a private worker deployed. This private worker is established an SSH or a mutual TLS tunnel between the HCP boundary worker. So all access inside this private subnet is only outbound access. There's no inbound access. So when the user requests it, Boundary is going to create that connection through that worker into that environment, into this EC2 instance. And if we opened up our ServiceNow portal, we'll see that we have a pretty basic ServiceNow portal just to see this in action. We kind of describe what we're happening is we're providing enhanced secret access or break glass solutions, where in this case, I'm the system administrator. I need access today, right now. I want access to the platform engineering team. I'm going to put a reason for it. Maybe it's a critical severity. I can give this a project code, CVE. Maybe I'm trying to fix some CVE of this device. So what happens in this instance is now we submit this request. This request is going to go towards an approval process. So we can see that in this demo, I'm the system administrator, but this could go to a team, a VP, directors, whoever it wants. Then that team is going to get access or is going to get notification through email saying, hey, are you approving this request? This user wants requests to the platform enhancement engineering team. And if we take a look at how our existing environment looks like in Boundary before we approve this, then this will kind of really help us understand it. So right now I have Boundary UI open, a desktop application, and I want to log into Maniac Corp. I'm going to use Azure to authenticate myself. So Azure is going to then ask me, hey, is this the user? Just another window. I'm authenticating myself through Azure AD, and perfect. Now I got access to it, but I'm not authorized. I've been authenticated through Azure, through AD. I have a log, but I'm not really authorized to do anything in any specific projects itself. So when we go back to ServiceNow and approve this request, so when we approve this request, so once again, we're here, approve, reject. I'm going to approve this request. Then a rhythm flow gets created, a change task gets initiated, and the process gets started. So when I dive back into Boundary, and I refresh this page, now I have access to my targets. And then this allows me to connect to my Linux instance. So I can click on connect. And now I've established a session. I can click on the shell and it actually automatically SSHs me right into that EC2 instance for me to be able to do any of my commands, anything I want on the device updated for that limited time. And after that time expires, my access then will be deleted. So for example, in this demo, in the flow, we set a 30-second time limit. So then at 30 seconds, my targets will disappear, my session will be deleted, and everything I've done was recorded, sent to S3 bucket or locally to my worker for any auditing purposes I need. And we have a full trail from a ticketing and change management perspective inside of ServiceNow for us to be able to audit it. So I clicked on targets, refreshed the page, click on sessions. Now I've lost access because that workflow itself was deleted. So really this gave me this break glass or emergency enhanced, so let's say security access to a device where I've used Vault and Boundary to kind of provide that just-in-time credentials and give me access to that device itself. So let's take a look at that workflow inside ServiceNow and show you how that looks like. So if we jump back into ServiceNow, we have our ticket here, and I could literally click on this rhythm. I can paste it inside of my tab. So we could search it, and we see the entire flow and the process of this request that was initiated. We see who approved it. It was approved. And we can take a look at the flow context of this, which then opens up Flow Designer. So let me just go to open the context. And we'll just click on here. And we'll go to our flow, which is Boundary Flow. So this is a simple way for us to build flows in ServiceNow. The first thing is we have that service catalog, which was really that enhanced screen that you saw when I requested something. So that's this is that service catalog that we built. Then inside of that service catalog or inside of this flow, we have specific actions. We get all the variables from that form. We ask for approval. Pretty straightforward, ask for approval. If approved, then ServiceNow is going to authenticate the boundary, so HCP boundary. And if we open this up, literally all we're doing in here is REST calls. We can actually integrate ServiceNow with Vault to grab these credentials too. But really all I'm doing is I'm making a REST API call towards my specific method, and I want to authenticate. Then once I grab this authentication token, I parse the JSON, where I'm going to be able to parse this token and extract it into a variable. So then when I go to my Flow Designer page, I will have a variable in here that's just called tokens. And then I can drag and drop this token variable into the next flow, which the next flow is what we're doing in HCP Boundary is updating the roles. So if we open up this action, we have a REST API call that grabs the roles, authenticates it using that token that we literally just drag and drop. And if I X this out, I can literally drag and drop tokens. We parse that data through the JSON parser that it has. And then we give access or grant access to that device or that user that access. After a certain seconds, so for this demo, 30 seconds, then we remove access from that user and remove the role. And if we kind of jump into this to show this, it's the same concept. We're getting the latest version from HCP Boundary. We're parsing that data. And then we remove that grant. So we remove that access itself. So then that user does not have any, or that group itself does really not have any access to the device. So when we jump into our HCP Boundary environment in here, so right under projects, we have the AWS projects that has those two targets. We have our Linux target that's using that injected application credentials, where we're injecting that SSH key from my Vault path. Here's where we have our roles. So we have specific roles for the platform team in here. And by default, the principals are an Azure group that my user is part of. So I can authenticate through Azure, do MFA, two-factor. But where I define the permissions is inside these grants. And this is where we allow specific actions or access to resources. And we can define those inside of ServiceNow or inside of Flow Manager, either using the REST kind of method that I've deployed, or you can actually tie this into Terraform Cloud, where then Terraform Cloud can actually make changes to HCP Boundary environment itself. So let's really take this and take a look at it from a quick example again. I'm going to go in here and request access to the platform team project demo. Let's just call this demo 1, 2, 3. I click on the submit. A request gets sent for an approval, which is all logged, monitored. The team now, VP manager now, or some team, security team has to, approve this request. We approve this request itself. And at this time, that flow gets kicked off. And then if we refresh the page, we'll see that a new grant has been created. So for this demo, just to give me wildcard everything access. So now when I log into Boundary, I now can see those targets itself. Log back into Boundary and refresh the page. We can then see access into our targets where we can click on the connect button, grab the secret, establish a session right through the shell that's provided us in here, and be able to do any types of commands and authorization itself. And again, after those 30 seconds expires, or the specific time frame expires, then our session is dropped, killed, and we have a full recording of everything that was taking place for that user itself. So now we have no access, no session, everything was dropped itself. And that was my demo of deploying this break glass or enhanced security solution that incorporates HashiCorp Vault and to kind of manage our secrets, Boundary to give us access into private infrastructure that has no inbound access to, and then using ServiceNow as our self-service catalog portal that is going to help us with that auditing and governance trail and that change management processes that we have in our existing environments itself. So just want to say thank you. And once again, I'm Sebastian Maniak. If you want to connect with me, just scan that barcode or hit me up on LinkedIn or my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.